viewer, wherever you are, and we thank you for joining us on which comes your way every other Friday from the studios of UBC here on Nile Avenue in Kampala. And with me in the studio today, I'm joined with the lost man. They have been asking me about Ndugu Rugarama. Now, Rugarama himself is here today, and he'll be talking to you shortly. But I'm also joined with another Ugandan Kenyan, Ndugu Lumbasi Dennis, who is a reporter here with the UBC, and also a very well-informed man on issues of this region of East Africa, and of course Africa in general. But today we are looking at the development, like we did last week. We are looking at what is happening in the neighborhood in Kenya, but of course the wider East African region, because if one country is disturbed, definitely the rest of the countries are equally disturbed, particularly Uganda, because we receive the biggest brunt when we have people running up and down, crossing the borders. Of course, the first point of call is actually Uganda here. So we are looking at what is happening in this great country, in the neighborhood where we have relatives, we have friends, and we have our colleagues of all sorts. Ndugu Rugarama, to begin with you, first tell people where you have been, because from the time you stepped in Caracas, things have never been the same.
Yes,
I don't know what happened.
Yes, good morning, Comrade Mututa, and good morning, my brother Dennis here. First of all, good morning to you, our dear esteemed viewers, and my absence for about 2 months, I think now.
Yeah.
One is that, like you have correctly put it, we had a very busy schedule in South America, Caracas, Venezuela to be specific, where we almost spent like 1 month. It was all about the resistance, spirit of resistance, because you know where Venezuela is.
Yeah.
It was slumped on economic sanctions, just like Cuba. For now, it is some years. So there is a rallying core in the greater South America to step up the spirit of resistance against the hegemonic American, that is North American empire, with all her policies, which in majority of the cases have never been for the common man. So we are part of the team for almost 3 weeks and extending to 4 weeks that engaged in extensive deliberations on how resistance against inequality and infiltration of imperialism can be defeated.
Okay.
We are taking lessons.
Okay.
And,
that was good. and in the spirit of the Pan-African spirit,
yes.
of course.
So apart from that, of course, I have been met with so much our immediate neighbors here, the Kenyans, and I hope that is what we are going to look at. But just to state that if we are not careful with this flag independence, which we have over time been trying to make a reality, practically speaking, to have the people have a feel of what it means to be independent, then I think we run a risk of serious regression.
Then it's the Gen Z, because that is what is happening. And we are looking at what is happening currently in Kenya, and also wondering, where did we go wrong?
And I think, personally, I've been keeping up with it, keeping tabs with what is happening in Kenya. And one of the main reasons, based on my research, is because of I've been in Kenya. I was in Kenya like 3 weeks ago. A couple of times, I always either connect a flight or go for conferences, and I noticed that the way the economy is currently, it is biting. Things are not easy for most Kenyans, and you know. They say an angry person, a hungry person is an angry person. And it can easily, when they can be used, they can be easily triggered. And I find it as one of the reasons as to why we had very many young people on the streets. And many people actually were wondering how possible is it? How was it? Who canvassed all this? We normally know how we canvass votes. But how did they end up having all these young people on the street with one agenda? and they call themselves leaderless, partyless, faceless, you know, like how?
Which is true, but we are all doing badly when it comes to the bite of the economy, not only Kenya.
Yeah. But yes, I know we all doing badly, but I think for Kenya's situation, it is kind of hyped because of the political atmosphere, because I personally know that I cover the elections in Kenya, you know, very well. And even when the results were released, there are very many people who are not after the results were released or announced, they were really still doubting. Even during their swearing in, there was that doubt. Until today, there are very many people who have never moved on, and they still think that they were robbed, and they still want to assent to that, to the harm or become, you know.
Yeah, but the other issue was, because we have been sitting on this set a number of times, and when we are looking at elections in Africa generally, we also been saying that Kenya politics is highly not politicized as such, but tribalized.
Exactly.
That this elections runs on tribes,
on tribal line
and ethnicity. But maybe we are not very right, because when you see this uprising, the other time the president was in Narok, and you'd have expected that in Narok is one of the areas where he will be welcomed. But you saw the reaction. So it means that even this tribal thing, when it comes to real issues that affect people, does not exist. Because when you look at this population of the Gen Zs, they are coming from all walks of life, including the children of the rich in the streets. It means then we need to look beyond the elections and the politics and the current situation in terms of economics in Kenya to come to the problem, the actual problem.
Yeah, maybe before Minister, I can see Mr. Rugarama wants to say something, but I also think that if you look at the Kenyan political environment, is that politics does not stop even after the swearing in. Immediately after the swearing in, the campaigns, the candidates who lost get back to the field, to the streets. Back to the streets. So you find that there's always politics. If you watch their media, for example, if you're watching media, you'll notice that the biggest or the most trending stories are always political stories. And there's a way it charges the community. It's like the people are always being fed with sometimes false information, factual information, and that is it. So for the case of the Gen Z and the young population, we look at it, for example, for our case here, the recent population census, and you see the results, I think we're about 46 million in Uganda, with a population of more than 50% less than 17, below 18 years old, I think below 17 years old. And you know that now this is a growing population. And if you look at how many jobs are created in a year, there are very few. And even if it's in the public sector, is actually the one that absorbs a lot of people. Will assume it's meant to absorb a lot of people, but that is not the case at the moment. The private sector is also constrained. We still talk about recovery from COVID-19. And this population is growing. Immediately they are done, most of them in the next couple of years will be 18 or more. So now it puts us in a catch-22 situation. Where will you take these young people? And are you going to take them to Saudi Arabia the way President Ruto has been saying? Because you don't expect my father to educate me to a level that I am, you know, to go through the academic. Then you send me out to Kuwait or Oman or Saudi Arabia to go and work there. Actually, you know what happens there? We've been following up on the trends and stories of what is happening in the Arab world. Yeah. So, you know, if that statement alone is like you're inciting violence. You're telling me, I went through all these primary school, paid all this for me to go and work for example, maybe $200 with all the tortures out there. So I think the president of Kenya, I will say, is probably being misadvised. He's not mixing up with the right people. And the other big challenge I would say is that he's up there in the sky than on ground, and this makes it very difficult, makes it easier for you. Of course, he knows he has enemies, and they tell you quite often our enemies are from within. Yeah, they're not from without. You see the outside there, you see, but from within. So if you're spending less time even in your own home, you'll end up coming back home when there is a crisis. And that is what even general is pushing some of the parents into doing DNAs.
Exactly. Like if you went to Caracas and spend there 2 months,
2 years.
when you come back, definitely you need to be.
You're not going to scare me. I'm firm.
Now, Nduguru Garama,
Yes,
we're following up on Dennis' submission, and we're looking at what is happening, of course, in Kenya is not an isolated case. Many of the African countries are faced with the same problem. But of course, you also appreciate that, unlike maybe Uganda here, Kenya has, and from the disorganization we had within the first East African community, that Kenya remained with many of the establishments in terms of industries, and you would have expected that for them, the jobs may be created. But of course, the other, like Uganda, when we had the instability here, Kenya had the benefit that most of the investors also shifted there. But of course, over time, things have been changing. And the more the governments have changed and more people have come in government, also things are changing. Ndugu Rugarama, do you expect that what is happening in Kenya could have been avoided?
To start with, our dear esteemed viewers, my opinion over these days that we have had the kind of protests in Kenya, generally speaking, because it is not just Nairobi. And you know, this comes on the heels of the unfortunate floods, the unexplained too much waters and the flooding of Nairobi. So it's like misfortune after misfortune.
Sure.
It exposes the fragility of the African state. One of the bottlenecks of Africa towards development is weak states. We had reached a point where we thought probably that a country like Kenya has politically matured, it relatively has got a stable economy, and therefore in terms of state formation and consolidation, that Kenya was some good distance in front of majority of the African countries. Now when we get situations like we have now in Nairobi and the other urban centers in Kenya, it gives you an impression that we still have a problem of weak states, which are not necessarily failed states, because we know failed states, we also know weak states. So where are the points or joints of weakness? You can clearly see that the Kenyan scenario actually also happened in Zambia. You remember that in the previous leaderships in Zambia, a small spark would trigger the entire population in Lusaka and other places to riot. And they would make governance extremely very hard for the presidents.
South Africa also.
In South Africa. I was just giving, thank you for that example. I want to give this litany of examples, particularly on the African continent. Well, I know it also happens in Europe. They are not safe. Don't be deceived. Just because the French, because of the Giga outbreak, they were seriously on, of course, in addition to giving themselves unnecessary work. Because I remember they were also protesting when Macron was campaigning that we promise you, President Macron, that Uganda is not going to build the pipeline because it is an environmental hazard to the people of Uganda and East Africa. Of course, we know all that is just hogwash. Their intentions are clearly very well known. So, in terms of state formation, the strength of the state on the African continent, we have been checked in majority of the cases, and I can assure you we have been found wanting. You would imagine, for instance, you remember the case of Egypt.
Yeah.
You see, it was very clear that if an economy, if an established country like Egypt could suffer the way it suffered, that a leadership would overthrow another leadership, then there would be an overthrow of a new leadership by the forces from within. And where is it not happening? We have had scares here in DRC. They almost carried out a coup that you can say was by military people. But you see again, when we come to Kenya, question is, the Gen Z, are they alone, or some people have actually infiltrated them? And they are causing, because I was listening to His Excellency Ruto, and he was like, when there was an attack on the National Assembly, a certain section of the so-called Gen Z was actually reaching for the armory. Now, who told the Gen Z that actually there is an armory in Parliament? Who said that? Where did they get that intelligence information? So that's why I'm saying, I'm not saying anything in particular. I'm only saying that.
I'm not saying you are saying.
Yes, let's just think broadly. Yeah. Let's look at this situation and imagine that it may not necessarily be something that spontaneously erupted. And probably on it, maybe the audience would also do a favor to the audience to share with them why we think it happened the way it happened. You see, it is true that a population can simply explode. It is true. Exactly. That there's nothing much really that the intelligence should have found out, but a group of small groups emerged, and all of a sudden they just grew into big groups, and before they even knew what they were doing, things were happening on the streets. Because to even claim that you are faceless, you are tribeless, you are fearless. You see, I have always maintained that there are two tribes in the world. They are the haves and the have-nots. This is Wakinda, Rui, Chukuyu, Waganda, Wanyankore. We are just emphasizing useless points of difference. Actually, the diversity is actually our strength, and we have lived with the diversity, especially on the African continent, much better than any other race, if you like, to look at race in terms of color and geographically where somebody is coming from. I want to conclude on this, Comrade Mututa, that what Kenya is suffering from is what majority Africa is actually suffering from. We have, as governments, borrowed over and above our means. Exactly. And that is what is actually killing Kenya. And it was not just Ruto, because Ruto was not the president until about 2 years ago. It was these previous governments that actually borrowed this money, but it was the country. Now, what the robust William Ruto wanted to do, and this is what we call leadership, which is well-intentioned, but again does not find time or proper means of explaining to the people so that they move together. The disconnect here is the robust Ruto as a president said we can do away, or at least in a very meaningful way, do away with being caught in the debt burden, so that we generate this revenue, pay off some of the debts, but at the same time use the domestically generated revenue to develop on our own. And the population was not having any of that. Why? Two. One, that we are having a population mainly of the youth and in the urban centers that have never ever felt, because in the majority of the cases, urban centers actually suffer the tax burden. They have never felt, and if you go back politically speaking, the majority of them were the same youth who were giving hard time to the leadership, even previously, supporting Baba and tribalizing whatever issues of theirs. But this time when you look at the tax itself, what is the finance bill I hope maybe in the next minutes, we also look at this particular finance bill. What was the finance bill actually purposing to do? If you are talking about taxing the sanitary pads, if you are talking about taxing the internet, do you expect the way the Kenyans use the internet and they are the youth, that you are talking about the taxing the internet? If you are talking about taxing the mama bogas and these border guys, and the message has not, intelligence message has not gone down to them, such that they do not have to erupt like a volcano, you expect that you purpose in a bill to tax this kind of youth in the age group and the areas, you hear the areas we are talking about, sanitary pads, internet, borders and these mama bogas, and you expect this bread. We are talking about food, and this is the difference. Uganda, we had the tax food, by the way.
Whose food are you going to have? My potatoes.
You see, that's another thing. If they wanted, by the way, they would tax you. They would, you see, but we had to do that anyway. So finally, therefore, what I'm saying is that what is going on in Kenya is not something that cannot happen elsewhere. Like I have showed the audience, we have seen this elsewhere. Seen it in Egypt, seen it in Zimbabwe, seen it in Zambia, seen it in Malawi, seen it in South Africa. But what is of critical importance is that as states, African states, we must develop an ideological, grounded approach to government issues. Because the moment you don't rhyme, you as the president, as the leadership, you don't rhyme with the wananchi, you will simply be a governor, you will not be a leader.
Yeah, because you talked about this, the weak states, especially in Africa. And that becomes a problem when you cannot have everyone on board agreeing with you. More so, and he put it, the UDA government comes to power with only 200,000 votes over and above the rest. So if you are having 200,000 votes,
the difference that brought you to power.
Yeah, then you have to know that you are not a very popular government. And because you are not a very popular government, then it means your policies, you have to have people on board to go with you. Of course, I'm sure UDA has formed alliances with other political.
Even you look at the appointments when they were the cabinet, they also a little bit picking here.
Yeah, to dress it up. And of course, we are going to see the same thing, I think, happen with your friends in ANC. If
but there is something critical here, Ndugu Mtuta. You see, when you hear the voices now, you will hear voices from some circles saying, all we need now to do as Gen Z is that we must get rid of this leadership. So if the finance bill was the issue, and the finance bill has been abandoned now, the president has given you his...
because the issue was...
The deputy president has said the same. Now you want to go and fix the leadership in the State House. Who is going to allow that?
There are three problems. The first problem is that while these groups, and like you came up spontaneously from every part of the country, I believe that no one was pushing these people from each of the different directions. Now, after the bill collapsed, the movement also somehow collapsed. But somehow people said, by the way, we can do something with this. And now where you realize that some people could have picked from there and saying, no, this time it's not only the bill, but the whole leadership must go. And that is why even in President Ruto's government, there are problems. You have seen what the vice president, the statements, the deputy president, yes, is saying. And you have seen the Ndidi Nyoros, who are supposed to be strong members of the UDA, who is the chairman of the finance of the Parliament Committee of allocations and budget. What is he saying? It also shows you that there is a big divide within the UDA administration. And the vice president is saying, you see, me, I've lost it because I'm no longer, and we were here at one point we were discussing after elections in Kenya, and I did mention that we just give it time when we shall see a fallout between President Ruto and his deputy.
Are you saying they have fallen out? That's what you're saying.
Not actually.
Of course there are faults now. You can see there are fractures.
Yes.
And with the fractures, it shows you. Like, for example, you're all in leadership. These are, the country is managed by these two individuals, I would say so. We have the president and the deputy. You're actually supposed to be in every day, let me say every day you're supposed to interact.
Absolutely.
You know, every day you have to pick a phone call. What can we do? There are some duties where the vice president is supposed to be delegated. And now, if we are not in good terms, you know, so what next?
And publicly.
But I listened to Deputy President Gachagua's press
in Mombasa
statement, the interview. I am still at pains to agree with whoever thinks that he is different from his principle. Where exactly did they differ? Maybe when you compare the President Ruto's statements, immediately he addressed the nation in the aftermath of these riots, vis-a-vis what Gachagua said, especially to the extent that he apologized, that the death, whether they were 19 or 24, should whatever, even if it is one, should not have happened. And then he was making comments. Of course, they will bring these clips, but listening to the entire speech that he gave to the country in his capacity as the deputy president, as somebody who was equally voted, by the way, not just appointed. You see, we must also appreciate the difference between our political structure and the Kenya's new political structure.
Exactly.
That this is a man who was on the ballot along with his senior, and they were voted.
Yeah, but you remember also...
Maybe the coordination, just the coordination, probably. I also want to believe that I don't think, in all fairness, that Gachagua was addressing the nation when William Ruto was not aware that he was going to address the nation. I doubt
but
that.
over time, we have seen the deputy president, especially when he goes to the mountains, to addressing the people of the mountains. I think the tone is changing, because for him he's saying that he may not have a problem with his boss, but that the boss has allowed a lot of things to happen and creating that gap. He seems to be saying that, look, this man listens more to other people. And over time, you have also realized that he has been relegated a lot from the public participation, especially when it comes to delegated functions, to the extent that a lot of work is now being done by the Prime Minister more than the Deputy President. I think that's where the beef is coming from.
But another thing, Comrade Mututa, the roles of a Deputy President, as per the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya, are constitutional. They are known. Now, who is going to delegate those roles? That's one.
But you remember what has also been happening between when Ruto was the deputy president.
Oh, you mean the machinations? Okay, now that you may have the political machinations. That yes, it may be your constitutional duty to do something, but somebody oversteps you. That happens.
Yes,
I know.
But that notwithstanding, for me, I'm looking at it this way. What options does now President Ruto have?
In terms of?
Way forward.
No. To start with, of course, politically speaking, for us, from where I come from.
Because Ruto is not going away, people are saying Ruto must go.
No, that's not going to tackling it from a Pan-African perspective.
Yes, from the Pan-African perspective. I wouldn't have done what Ruto did if I was the president. No, I would not have conceded to the pressure in the manner in which Ruto conceded to the pressure of the street people. I wouldn't have done that.
I agree with
I
you.
would have revised, all right, I would have revised my approach towards the protesters, not to go into serious head-to-head confrontation with the people who are not armed.
Send
I
back,
would- I
send,
would- I
send
would-
back the bill.
Yes, I would reconsider that. 2, I would go back, because you see the bill is already, by the way, it only awaits his assent. The MPs did their job. If he woke up now, even if he goes on television and he says, by the way, I'm now not going to sign the bill. And then immediately when the madam is giving tea, he signs the bill. It will still be no. Now the difference would be in implementation.
Yeah.
So why I'm saying that I wouldn't have done what senior brother Ruto did is like this. In any political calculation, the moment you give in to the forces, who you yourself, you don't know the constituents. You have said they are faceless, they are tribalist, they are leaderless,
Partyless.
and then you give in to such a group.
Let's
It becomes a very big politically speaking.
yeah, because now you are putting
see-
the members at who endorsed the bill, and it was in the open.
They have already attacked them. Actually, Gachagua, the deputy president, was calling upon the Wananchi not to target anybody who exercised the way these people are exercising their right to demonstrate. These elected members of parliament also were exercising their right to do their work, because voting on a bill is their right and it is their constitutional what obligation. So that's what they were doing.
In 1982, when Moi first attempted coup, the Air Force attempted coup.
That was a turning point.
Yes, and when he regained his government,
Yes.
the next thing he did was to do
The Fata Nyoyo,
and it was again the Gen Z, by the way, because people who were overthrowing Moi were the students from the universities and a few of their colleagues who are now working in the Air Force. These all were young officers.
But I have an exception there. I think Moi's troubles, especially that very incident you have, because they are tried more than 3 times anyway. That very incident that you are talking about, remember we have to go back and look at how Moi became the president. On the sickbed of the founding father of the independence of Kenya, it was like a passing declaration that please, Moi succeeds me. And because of the Chukwis, again, the tribalism that we are talking about, because of the Chukwis who are surrounding the founding father of the nation, they couldn't see a Karenjin coming in and taking over in that fashion. They tried to frustrate it.
They did, of course.
The wife to now the mother to Uhuru Kenyatta now
Mama
here,
Ngina.
Mama
yes,
Ngina.
Mangina, made it the point to take this information and made it even public to even the people she knew were going to, or they were the ones behind opposing it. So it was very difficult for it now to change. Now, when he had become already the president, they thought of other ways, including even confusing some of the Garibo population that actually it was the university students. What did the university students have against Moi? What had he done?
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So the truth of the matter is that the political actor who is cunning will always use every available force to turn the situation in his favor.
Yeah, but
and this is what they were trying to do.
Yeah, you also, when you go that, I think we shall have time to look at how it came even to be that, because the Mau Mau, actually Gachagua is one of the sons of the Mau Mau fighters. That entitlement also of the Kikuyus, and of course, you know, the Kikuyus alone cannot form a government. But of course, they have that entitlement, given the Bush mentality. Because
and they do also, and besides the entitlement, they do have the majority.
Exactly.
And numbers matter.
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yeah.
But now, coming
and they
back
have
to that,
the influence and the money, because they are the ones who have been in the business.
and even if you are talking about the taxes, then you're also targeting them.
Yes, exactly.
Now, after Moi overthrow, the attempted coup of 1982, what happened is Moi went back and did the budge in his government.
Yes.
And you saw what happened. Do we see this also happening in Ruto's government?
Okay, it's okay.
Already, if you, earlier on, before even you came here, we came for this show, and we had a conversation out there on the corridors regarding what next. The fact is this, there must be like as a leader, Ruto considered, from Nduguru Garama's perspective, his observation, it looks like it was a sign of weakness But there are times you really have to take that step back and first of all, because everything was coming at once and in full force, you really need time to, for some time to
reflect.
To reflect. What next? Because at that speed, it will have been very dangerous for him to just say, today I'm going to I'm signing the, remember he said, I'm going to sign that document. Now, it has happened, and like I said, it might, there have been rumors, lately we rely so much on the social media. There are those ones who claim that he's already the bill is already active, But now it takes us back to where we started this conversation from, is that now, these are young people who claim not to having
anything,
not to be having anything. And I remember
actually they are, because I don't think they're interested in the leadership.
But the way, I know very well, we've had, of elections and campaigns. There are times when you hear that the electors have been ferried, ferried from one location to another, just to show them, for you to have that picture, that for the picture moment, of the photo moment. Now, look at this case whereby this has happened. There's a rumor that there are big people, big wigs in government and in the private sector who might have funded the whole protest. So the fact is this: there is no way, even if I was in the position of the president, I would say, you can't just let it go like that and say, so, okay, fine, I've conceded, and now I haven't signed this thing, and let's try and fix this and that. You have to, first of all, to go back and look for where did all this start. And just like you mentioned on that, the statement about the offense being a criminal, a treasonous offense. If there are people behind all this, then, and they have, the whole protest kept on changing. It changes from this to that, this to that, because they didn't want to lose gas along the way, because they had only one agenda, and I think the agenda was Ruto must go. So now that he has not gone, what next? The same applies to what you said about President Moi. That coup, after Moi became the president, he ended up becoming, they call him a dictator. Yeah. But there are times, what causes someone to become a dictator anyway? You might be having this is a gentleman whom you've seen the president, how he lives, he's more of a showbiz guy. Now, with what has happened with him, and now that from the rumors and everything you're hearing, it probably, the whole thing has been, it's an inside
game.
Yeah,
actually, Dennis, information here. When you look at the recent events, and which have actually not died down in Kenya, vis-a-vis the picture that President Ruto had painted globally, you can see what we call a complete mismatch.
Oh, yeah.
Here, Ruto was marketing a fully, newly revitalized, branded Kenya that everybody should admire. Here is a situation whereby the very rotten dirt of Kenya is being exposed internally.
So now, from that question, at the other end, the fact is this: Ruto has to deal with these issues. Of course, there are those recommendations of firings, yes, the cabinet secretaries. These guys have only served for less than 2 years. It's very difficult to judge someone's performance based on that short time. Yeah, You've not even, those are 2 financial years, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, because you remember last time when we were at the State House, how he was complaining when they came late, say, you have come for signing of your work assessment, but you are coming late.
Yeah. So with only the 2 years, and you know very well.
But it could be also possible that those people in government who have been telling, if they were advising him to do what he exactly did, had a reason as to why they were advising him, if it were for the wrong reasons.
Of course, presidency is one mostly, if you're in the political sphere, you'll always dream, everyone, I think almost every, even if you're an RCC, you always, it's a good thing, you always dream of becoming a president, because that is the epitome of all of leadership, as far as, let me say, in a country. But in this case, if you look at now what has transpired, buildings are being burnt down. Actually, the Uganda House was burnt a day to its official to his, and actually I had been invited. I still have my air ticket on this, which has been postponed.
And to make matters worse, and this is what disturbs me again on this, by the way. I have been listening to President Ruto, I listened to Deputy President Gachagua, I've listened to some other worthy leaders
and the religious,
in Kenya. I have not heard somebody specifically coming up to condemn the vandalization of Uganda House. I expected that one from a political class. Reason being that I didn't hear that happening to any building belonging to Tanzania or any other country.
Embassy. Yeah, but there are also theories. One of the theories was that the building was actually not burnt by demonstrators, that it was burnt because the police launched a canister there and exploded and burned the house. Like
well, that one may be true, but we were all watching. And when we were watching, we saw a group of violent people on the ground and others who were actually climbing on that particular building. Now, either you convince me that those were fighters going to put out the fire, and the lower parts, the ones who stayed on the ground, were onlookers, useless and idle. But short of that, the people I saw with the hammers, who were actually kind of removing the burglars, the glasses, throwing in all sorts of petrol bombs, were not that. Then I need an eye.
And maybe to chip in on that issue, it's also about, I'm sure, Mtuto, you've been to the Uganda House before in Nairobi. And where it is located, I personally feel like it's not in a very good location.
In fact, one would think it is one of the shopping
the shops there. Yes. Actually, I know it's near a bank. Then there are some phone shops and whatever. There's some butter shops which were actually attracting thieves. It's maybe you might call it strategic in terms of accessibility. But for safety, I think for going forward, there must be a conversation on where to locate an embassy. Because, for instance, if you want to get help, if you want to get help from a consulate or an embassy, people fly from here all the way to wherever to just go and sit for an assessment, to be assessed whether you're eligible for a visa or not.
So comrades, are you suggesting that the location of our Uganda House?
I don't know. It's not a bad location.
It's not even suggesting that. But truth be told that its location is also problematic when it comes to now the new wave of protests in Kenya.
And the fact is this, there is a very close relationship between Uganda's and Kenya's political class, especially when you're talking about up there.
And when you go into their media, we have got the Pan-African platform where almost majority of the African countries members are registered. And I've been listening to the voices, especially from our counterparts from Kenya, a good number of them. It is very sad, very unfortunate that some of them actually think that their troubles, current troubles they have,
Uganda,
are partly, can partly be, and partly in great detail, be explained by the actions, the brain and the handwork of the Ugandan leadership.
Which is not true.
I found that one very strange.
Which is not true.
And I've been trying to put them in the picture to show them that really, you people, let's even go back to your history. You have on more than 3 occasions almost gone into ethnic cleansing. What was the participation of Uganda? Even when we had some of your leaders being indicted in ICC, tell me, what was the contribution of Ugandan government to this mayhem? I said, in the face now, where we are now promoting East African community, how can you be emphasizing things which are unattainable? Moreover, just to rumor mongering. This is a Pan-African group. I said, you can't do this.
Yeah, there is a lot of phobia of thinking that.
But you see, there is something also, probably which we need to look at. In great detail, I think there is a very serious issue of ideology. We need to do a very serious rethink, soul searching, a great rethink of the leadership going forward. That anything can happen anytime. And probably, I'm not privy to the intelligence information in Kenya. I don't know to what extent. But upon the admission of the very leadership, President Ruto said the following: we have the weakest Inspector General of Police. If not in East Africa, than in the entire
But
world.
did he have to tell the whole world that?
He said that. I'm coming to make that point now. If the president himself,
Who appointed the same man?
no, I think that the
was
appointment was the previous appointment.
No.
Is he the one who appointed this one?
Yes.
The leader
Because,
of the
no,
police.
the Inspector General of Police, because they were claiming, including his Deputy President Gachagua, they were claiming that this man was a junior person, which is true, actually, was so much junior, the one of security, the national security chief, was a very junior person. And when he was, for whatever strange reasons, appointed as the chief, he made sure that the 3 deputies who were there were dismissed. And the 13 or plus assistant directors who were mature and experienced also were reassigned somewhere. And that's what has created the
But you
information
know,
flow gap.
When we meet next time, because time has gone and we have to leave the set for now, we'll also be looking at the issues of the operation, some of those operations and where the problem could be. But also, maybe the youth are not also seeing the idol they will need to admire in the administration of Kenya. When you look at the president, the deputy president, the other ministers, do they have any following in terms of, you are talking about ideology? These are people who come together when there's an election. You form an alliance and you deliver yourself to
That is the problem with Kenya, by the way.
Yes.
Kenya, in a majority of the cases, when it comes to the election, politics of elections, they are usually doing what we call ad hoc and politics of convenience.
So next time when we meet a viewer, we'll be looking at some of these issues, and of course we shall also ask for your contribution so that we make this program more educative, and then we'll have the Africans informed about what is happening in our backyard. What's happening in Kenya, for example, is not an isolated case. It can happen in any of these countries of Africa because our systems are more or less the same copy and paste. And so that's what's happening. Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Nduguru Garama, and don't disappear again. And thank you, the production team, which was behind the production of this program. Until next Friday, we shall be back again with more interesting discussions about who we are as the people of this continent of Africa. And to all, I say thank you and have a nice and a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.
Hello everyone! Welcome back to Uplift Official. Today's video is particularly important as we delve into natural ways to support cancer prevention. While there's no guaranteed method to prevent cancer, incorporating certain lifestyle choices can contribute to overall well-being and potentially lower the risk. So, let's jump into the top 10 natural ways to support cancer prevention. Number 1. Maintain a healthy diet. Fill your plate with a rainbow of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. These nutrient-packed foods provide antioxidants and essential nutrients that support overall health. Next up is regular exercise. Engage in activities, whether it's walking, jogging, or dancing. Exercise not only helps maintain a healthy weight, but also boosts your immune system and promotes overall well-being. Number 3. Maintain a healthy weight. Maintaining a healthy weight is crucial. Excess weight, especially around the abdomen,